أكبر الله أكبر.
الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه كما يحب ربنا ويرضى. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. أشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. The last letters that we took is the ta and the dal and the ta. These letters, barakallahu fikum, this is the front tooth, come from the tip of the tongue. The tip of the tongue and that which is in usul al-thanaya, that which is where the front teeth come from. The gum there, where the front teeth come out. But the tongue is not on the teeth in these letters, as we explained before. The tongue is not pressed on the teeth. We want you to think upwards. Ta, ta, da, to. Let's go over these three letters to show how the tongue is and the difference between these letters. The ta and the dal. What is the difference between the ta and the da? These three letters are shared in makhraj. Ta, da, to. Three letters shared in makhraj, the tip of the tongue and that which is behind the front teeth. The teeth are not pressed upon. But we want the reader not to push his tongue straight forward, but rather bring his tongue upwards, right behind his teeth, exactly behind his teeth, immediately behind his front teeth. Ta, da, to. The to, all of these three letters we explained, all the these letters has no sound. All three of them. There's no sound in these letters. What do you mean no sound? When it has a sukoon, the sound doesn't continue like ash. It's at, ta, at, da, at, to. The sound does not flow in these three letters. The sound doesn't flow. That's one common description of these three letters. The sound doesn't flow. That indicates that these letters are pronounced in a hard manner. The reader has to combine these two entities together, which are used to pronounce this letter, has to combine them in a strong manner. Ta, what's the difference between ta and a dal? The ta has air in it. Ta has air. The dal, no air. So which of them are harder? Which one of them are harder in pronunciation? Which ones are the two entities are combined in a stronger manner? The dal, because no air and no sound. But the ta, t, 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 ta, ta, there's some air in it. There's some air in it. Nah. Now we want to look at the difference between the ta and the ta. Now we want to look at the difference between the ta and the ta. Ajib. طيب. And the ta, barakallahu fikum. This is your tongue when you pronounce the ta. This is the ta. Your tongue is in that manner. is lying in your mouth. Wada ar-raha, on its natural disposition. You don't do anything to it. You leave it just as it is in your mouth. Ta, 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 tu, ti. You leave it just as it is. Tayyib. The ta, you raise up the back of the tongue and you lower the front of your tongue. Ta. It's not an issue that goes back to the lips. There's no lip movement in either of the two. Ta, ta. Now, ta, ta. Now, how do you raise up the back of the tongue? Mm-mm. Right? How do you raise up the back of the tongue? By lowering the tip of the tongue. Every time you lower the tip of the tongue and use those muscles at the bottom of your tongue to push down, then automatically the back of the tongue raises. To, to, ta, to, ta, to. There's another thing I want you all to recognize about these letters. This is your tongue and the ta. This is your tongue and the ta. When you pronounce the ta, 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 this is really is what touches the tip of the tongue. Ta, 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 ta. This here, look on her here, this barely touches. X, it barely touches. This barely touches. There's no pressure whatsoever. Ta, ta, ta. As for ta, then all of this is compressed up tight. All of this is compressed up tight. There's a difference between the two letters. And the concentration is indeed here. Ta, ta, ta. When you say ta, 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 this barely touches. There's no pressure. There's no pressure. Ta, 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 ta. So this is how the sound changes. There's not an issue that goes back to the lips. It's not an issue that goes back to the lips. So that's these three letters. And the dal is like this also. The dal is like this also. Da, da, ta, ta, da, ta. So what's the difference between da, ta? That the ta has air in it. Da, ta, ta, da. It's the same makhraj. Now when you get to the ta, this what you call this here mutbaqa. It is totally sealed. And this is called munfatiha, but that'll come. That will come, inshallah. We're going to go to three other letters today. The three letters that come after this are what? Sin, Sod, Zai. This comes from the tip of the tongue, but it's not like the tip of the tongue we've been dealing with. The tip of the tongue that we've been dealing with previously, where is that? That's here. The ta and the noon and the dal and the ta is from this region here. This is the tip of the tongue. But when we're talking about the sin and the sod and the zay, we're talking about in the front tip of the tongue. That's what we're talking in the front. We call that mustadaq al-lisan. Mustadaq. Now we're talking at the tip, but the tip from in front of the tongue. Not in front, not on top of. This is on top of the tongue. Ta, wa da, wa ta, wa na. That's on top of the tongue as far as the tip. On top of the tongue as far as the tip. But these three letters, the sin, the sod, and the zai, This comes from in the tip of the tongue, meaning in front of it. In front of it. We know, barakallahu fikum, that every letter needs what? It needs two entities that collide. So if the tip of the tongue is one of the entities, what's the other entity? These letters, first of all, these letters are not articulated by two entities colliding with one another, but rather by two entities approaching and coming close to one another. Coming close to one another, not actually colliding. So if we hear that they're not colliding, then we know that these are soft letters, all of them, because none of them are about colliding. Nuh-uh, they're about drawing close. So what is it? Here it is. It's the tip of the tongue. And that is what is between the thanaya earlier was sufra. That was just between the front teeth and the bottom teeth. That which is between it. That's the tongue. And these are the two teeth. As, asa, azza, asa, asa, azza. These three is no collision. So the fact that there's no collision shows what? That's the first thing that shows. All three of these letters, all three of them, sound flows. All three of them. Opposite of what? The ta and the tha and the dal, all three of those, the sound stops. There's no sound. All three of these, what occurs? The sound flows, meaning it's soft. Well, the two entities are not colliding initially. They're not colliding. They're just coming close to one another. What are the two entities? The tip of the tongue and that which is between the two front teeth. What are the two entities that come together to produce these three letters, these three sounds? The tip of the tongue and that which is between the two front teeth. That which is in between the two front teeth. That come close to one another, they don't actually collide. They don't actually collide. Barakallahu feekum. What is it that we have to do after this? We have to now, once we know that three letters share the same entities that come together or collide, now we have to figure out what is the difference between these letters. What is the difference between these letters? Let's start off with the sin and the zay and the zai. The sin, the zai. What do we say about these letters? All of them have sound. All of them have sound. In the sin, air flows. In the zai, no air flows. As, so azza, you have to push a little further, push a little harder. Stop the flow of air. As, that sound is you put an extra pressure there. The sin, all of these letters sound flows. All of them sound flows. But what does the sin have? So understand this, barakallahu fikum. If all of them the sound flows, then that one differentiation or distinguishment between the two is that some of them have to be no air. The distinction is going to be in air. If they all have the sound in comparison, then the distinction has to be in what? In air. It has to be. The separation between them is in air. So the sin, air flows. And the zay is no air. Bear with me as we erase this here. We want to understand, where does the air flow? How does the air flow? Well, before that, let's explain the sword. Let's explain the sword. What is the difference between the sin and the sword? All of them have what? Sound flowing. Both of these have air flowing also. So what is the difference between these two? Both of them have sound flowing. Both of them have air flowing. The difference is what we said about the tat and the taw. This is the sin, your tongue on a natural disposition. This is the sword. That's one way to look at it. So this is called muraqqaq. Muraqqaq. This is called mufakham. This action, the result of his action is tafkhim, mufakham. The result of that action is called muraqqaq, tarqiq. So you say as-sad is mufakham. The sin muraqqaq. What does muraqqaq mean? That your tongue is like this. Sa. What does mufakham mean? This is the result of your tongue being up. It comes out so. You say as-salah. You don't say as-salah. Even though the makhraj is the same, even though the point of articulation is the same, but the way that the mouth is shaped inside differs. As-salah. Half saw. You don't say half sa. Or salah. I need to make salah. As-salah. Saw. Ihdina sirata. Sira, not sirata. Soy. Stronger. This is from one nahiyah. This is from one angle. The difference between the two from one angle. Let's look at another angle between the sword and the sin. This is your tongue and the sin. This is your tongue and the sword. When you say sa, when you say sa, I'm sorry. Let me make this a little smaller here. This is your tongue and the sin. This is your tongue and the sword. When you say sa, this is not barely touching. Listen, this is not barely touching. This is barely touching. Sa, barely touching. When you pronounce sword, this is very tight on the teeth. This here, very tight on the teeth. These parts here. Saw is very tight on the teeth. Saw. Sa, saw. You raise your tongue up. Back of the tongue. Saw. Let's look at the flow of air, and then we're going to stop here. This is your tongue. The first thing you have to do when you're pronouncing these two letters is bring your teeth together. Some people have what's called an overbite, meaning the front tooth up top, they overbite the smaller teeth. It's a natural thing that some people have. So when their tongue is there like that, then the air can't flow out. So you cannot, if you have an overbite, like I do, you cannot pronounce the sin by just bring your teeth together. The first thing you have to do is bring your teeth together like this. So you have to move the top jaw back or move the bottom jaw up. You have to bring your teeth together. That's the first thing you have to do. So if you have an overbite or you have shorter teeth, some people, their front teeth are shorter. You have to do whatever you have to do to bring these two teeth together. Your tongue is here, and the air is going to go like that. This space has to be there. So your tongue is not exactly that low. Your tongue is actually between the two. Your tongue is actually between the two. So the air is going like that. So on the zay, what do you do with the zay? The zay, you put more, you put it a little closer. You stop the sound and just you stop the air and just the sound goes. As as you have as you all make both sounds. Say as as. I mean, you have to bring your teeth, your tongue a little closer to the teeth to stop the sound. You have to stop off one. All of them have sound. You have to stop the flow of air. Us, us. All of them have sound. You have to stop the flow of air. Go as. So you can have a zay, and when you lighten up, your zay will become a scene. As, and you will see that this zay stronger than what? And the scene. This is our lesson for today. Inshallah, we'll review it tomorrow before we go on. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.